we go.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to HylandShire. And this is my new to me 1997 Polaris Sportsman 500. Let's check it out. So you can probably hear in the background that there's an ultralight somewhere. He's gonna fly by. Oh, here he comes over the trees. He does this pretty much every night. The guy must be living the dream. There he is. You zoom in. He always waves and does basically the same route. But anyway, back to why we're here. This is a 1997 Polaris Sportsman 500. What I believe was really the game changer when it came to the mass adoption of quads, ATVs, four-wheelers, whatever you want to call them. This is when people started buying in hordes. And there's a reason for that. Some major innovations were happening with Polaris when they were trying to compete with the Japanese brands. So the Japanese brands really hit the market a lot sooner. Now, Polaris was in the market, don't get me wrong. There were Polaris ATVs that existed before the Sportsman, but they weren't really big sellers. They were a little bit expensive, and they didn't really have anything that was defining them as unique and worth that extra money. These are made in America, they were engineered in America, and that's a nice differentiator, but people had to pay for that. The previous models, most of them were solid rear axle, a lot of them were two-strokes, going back to the 80s, and a lot of them were two-wheel drive. They did introduce four-wheel drive well before this model, but again, you still had that solid rear axle. The Sportsman, to my knowledge, was the first Polaris that had independent rear suspension. And it was also the first 4x4 ATV that was mass-produced to have independent rear suspension. And I mean true independent rear suspension. You got A-arms on both sides with drive shafts. There's no nonsense here, no trickery with control arms and a solid axle like some other brands tried. That is independent rear suspension. Okay, it also had shift-on-the-fly all-wheel drive, which older Polaris has had as well, but that was a big seller with these McPherson-style struts. Basically, this is the Cadillac of the woods. They're comfortable, they're heavy, big cushy seat, and what really made this thing sell was that independent suspension and that 500 four-stroke. That's what made this thing the machine to have that, of course, sportsmen all over wanted. So, why am I excited about this? Well, it's a 97, which puts it at exactly 25 years old. And what that means is in New Hampshire, no more of this, which is about $90 a year to register for trail use. And we move instead to this. This is an antique. 25 years or older in New Hampshire. That includes cars, motorcycles, and ATVs are considered antiques, and you can get special registrations for them. When it comes to OHRVs, which stands for Off-Highway Recreational Vehicle, the registration is for life. So I paid $60, and now I have a plate for life. So this thing is an absolute legend. I've already taken it on its maiden voyage. Let me tell you a little bit more about it. One owner vehicle, came with manuals, garaged its whole life. Every mile was put on by the same gentleman, and yeah, there's quite a few miles, but you could just tell by looking at it in the photos that it was in good shape. He told me these are original tires. That's insane. Yeah, they're pretty worn out, but 3,000 miles. The rear ones are in excellent condition. So when I found this and it was affordable, most of these are starting to become pretty expensive, at least as far as a 25-year-old vehicle should be. So I was really happy that I found this in my budget, and I'm able to do that lifetime registration, which again is cost effective. It's going to be more comfortable on the trails for Bree and I. We both fit on there nicely, and I might do a passenger seat in the future. Incredibly smooth. Plus, these are a CVT, so you have high, neutral, low, reverse, and that gives you the option to cruise comfortably and fairly quietly at like 30-35 miles an hour without even trying. The old 87 Quad Runner 300 with its 5-speed semi-automatic, top speed is 30, and you are winding that poor little engine out. So this is much more comfortable on the big trails in northern New Hampshire. Now, all that being said, it's not perfect. There is one issue that I'm having, and I'll show you that now. The issue we're having is this plastic, which was kind of new in 97. It doesn't hold up very well. And this is original. This ATV was used very, very slowly and so on, and probably at consistent temperatures throughout its whole life. Well, we took it up on a trail ride, and it immediately all went sideways. You can see here how it's bulbous, and then it curves back inward. It's hard to illustrate on camera. You can also see warpage here, but just in general, it's all out of shape, and the clutch is now hitting. It's actually eaten through the bottom ever so slightly. This is a common issue with these. This plastic just warps due to heat. Now the rear cover is made of the same plastic. I should say the rear section. And yeah, these screws are loose. I did that on purpose to stop it from rubbing. But the rear section's a little more complex to replace because you have to remove the clutch. And I'm hoping I won't need it because the new replacement section, which I'll show you in a second, is definitely bigger. They've come out and just made this whole section bigger to give bigger clearances around the primary clutch. So I'm hoping that'll solve it. It's a Chinese component, but it's such a common problem that they were pretty affordable, so I got a new cover online. Other than that, it's been pretty flawless, so let's get that put on. So we moved over to the pavement. I'm going to illustrate the problem before I disassemble. So we'll fire it up. So yeah, I mean, clearly it's got issues. So we're gonna pop that out of there, and I'll show you the new one right now. So here's the new piece. I'm confident, and we'll do some measuring of it, but I'm pretty sure just by looking at it, this is much bigger in pretty much every dimension. So we'll take an inner diameter here and double check some things, but I'm pretty sure that's bigger. But you can see, nice and straight. There's not any warpage. All the lines are crisp. So, not a bad deal. Came with the boot, which is for the vent right here. Came with the zip ties that hold the boot on. Yes, that's how they did it factory. It came with a new gasket. Also, this gasket is way thicker that way than the current gasket, and I'll show you that when I take it off. Okay, so disassembly of this thing's pretty easy. You need just this for tools. 1/2-inch drive or 1/4-inch drive would work, because you're going to need both a 3/8 and a 7/16 socket, and then you're just going to need a Phillips screwdriver. Obviously, find the worst one in your toolbox. That is by far the best way to do it. Step 1, we'll pop off the seat. Super easy. Little latch right there. Step 2, we're going to pop off this panel. We're going to lift right here. There's some tabs. And then we're going to slide down. There's 3 tabs in here. Down and back. When we try gingerly to pull this up, you could put a flathead screwdriver in with these tabs to help them on their way. There's one. I want to use a flathead on that one. There we go. So those are releasing. Good. Then we're going to come down right here. Gently, gently, gently. And while we come down and out, we're also pulling backwards. And there it is. So those 3 tabs, you can see that one's broken, barely, just hanging on, and those 2 tabs. So a pretty delicate piece, but anyway, they do hold themselves in place nicely enough. Next, you should remove the snorkel with that one bolt there, and then it falls off, but you don't have to. I'm going to, just because it's easy. Also, this thing, the carb needs a little work, so I've been turning the fuel off. And the next step is not to loosen these, even though I already have them loose, like I said, because I wanted it to stop rubbing while we rode it over the holiday. But the next step is actually to take out these four right here. So they're Phillips on top, they're nylon lock on the bottom, and when you pull those off, this whole fender will swing out, which will give you clearance to remove this. You definitely cannot skip this step. There's no way to get this out of here unless this fender swings out. So I switched over to a 7/16 for the bottom. Hold it steady on top with your Phillips. Get that loose. It is a nylon nut, so sometimes you have to go pretty far before you can go by hand. Now these are two different lengths. The front ones are short, the back ones are long, and that's because there's a spacer in the back. The good news is you can't mess it up, because if you put the short ones in the back, they won't pop through the bottom. 4 screws out, fender moves. Take out your spacer, you're going to drop it if you don't. Now we'll switch back to a 3/8 and get the clutch cover bolts. Okay, we should be able to slide this out and then wiggle this off. Piece of cake. So here's the internal componentry, and basically anybody who's ever seen a snowmobile is going to recognize this. You have a Polaris style primary clutch which uses weights and rollers, and you have a secondary clutch right there, and of course your drive belt. Mine is very stretched, but I don't have a new one today, so we're going to go ahead and put it back on anyway. I do need to do this again with a new drive belt. Good thing the part number is right there. So here's our damaged piece. We know that it's shrunken and out of round and all sorts of issues. We have the primary making contact there, we have the primary making contact here, which is the bottom. Wore a hole through, a bunch of melted material there, and it's also making contact on the top. This is why we need a new belt. Even the belt was making contact. So that's worn out. I wish I had the sticker. Maybe I can buy that to stick on this one. I don't know. But let's compare. Are they different? Okay, it's hard to show it side by side, and I don't have my tripod with me, but I measured on the original from where we were making contact to where we were making contact from my diameter points. Okay, and that on this is just about 7.5 inches. The same exact piece right here to right here, just on the outside of this casting line, 7 3/4. That's a massive difference. And secondly, I measured the depth. So to the inside of this casting, to the top of this lip right here, on this one is 7.5, and on this one is only 7 3/8. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. I'm feeling like it's gonna work without having to replace the back plastics here. I do wish this was a little more stable. I think that's part of the issue with why they warp, but nothing I can do about that. The newer designs do have more fasteners behind these clutches. This one is a 97. It's pretty early, so they are what they are. And of course, the last piece of the puzzle, which is going to make a massive difference in how this thing fits, is this gasket right here. So let's see if I can get that out. There it is. Big guy. And again, this is just how materials have changed over 25 years. This stuff is like extruded foam rubber, and it is so squishy. Also, I'm not sure if this is wear or if it was cast in. I'd have to see a new OEM Polaris part. But it has this channel in it, which is supposed to be for this lip right here. But it gives it an inconsistent depth throughout. So this is garbage. This is super thin. Look at the difference. So that's how they sit. Massively thicker. So this is going to be so much further away from the clutch. Problem solved. Not bad for 62 bucks off eBay. At least I'm sure it's going to be solved. Let's put it together. Well, I can tell already that's going to make a massive difference. It's totally flush instead of inset like the old one. Good. Let's get it put together. Okay, and there it is. I do want to give a word of caution. You're going to notice stuff like this, and that's because the old one is warped. We know this. That's the back part of the cover. However, they give you so much gasket and so much lip that has eaten its way into the gasket, and that is actually sealed. It's eaten into that rubber, which explains why there's a groove in the old one. So do not over tighten these trying to close these gaps. All you want to do is just barely make sure it's tight as soon as those pieces of plastic are touching each other. That's it. That even, I don't know if I squished that or if that's casting. I'm pretty sure that's casting because I tried very carefully not to over tighten. So let's turn the fuel back on and fire it up. Before we put everything back together, I just want to know if it's hitting. Well, it's not running very good, but it's solved. Piece of cake. Been out here for maybe 15 minutes. Totally worth it. Worth every penny. All right, let's get it put back together. I'm not going to work on the carb today. I'm actually going to run some seafoam through it a few times and drive it around, and maybe that'll work. All right, Snorkel's back on. I didn't use the new boot because I like my old one. The rubber seemed to be in slightly better condition. So you win and you lose some. This is better than the old cover. That's better than the new boot. Oddly, fuel is on and it's not leaking. So that's why I'm trying the seafoam. A lot of you might say, hey, go ahead and fix it now. Yeah, I agree with you. It'd be easier than taking it apart again, but I think it might work with the seafoam. So we're gonna give it a shot. And just like that, we're done. It's all put back together, and it's time for a test ride. Really, really easy fix. Let's go give it a shot. Well, I'll tell you what, I couldn't be happier. I've been wanting one of these for quite a long time. I rode them as a kid, and now that they've hit the antique mark, 25 years old, this has a metal plate on it from New Hampshire. It's registered for life. I only had to pay once, and it's as every bit as modern as a 2022 ATV, minus power steering. Every other piece of this is the same technology they're still using today, and carburation. There are still carbureted ATVs available. There are still no power steering ATVs available. So this was new for 97. It's still what they're using in 2022 because it doesn't need to be perfected anymore. So I'm super psyched to have this. I got a great deal on it. Minus the clutch cover repair. This thing, these are original tires at 3,000 plus miles. Unbelievably well maintained, garaged, just well taken care of. I'm super happy to find it, and There's not much else to say. It's a legend, and it's now mine. Thanks everybody for watching HylandShire. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We're going to be chugging along on Mossy Bus. I haven't gotten a lot done. We've had holidays. We've had a bunch of stuff going on. We bought this. We had a great ride up north. We still have the 87 Suzuki. I don't know if you guys have seen that in its own video. Quad Runner. Grew up on that machine. It's not going anywhere. But this is more comfortable. Makes more sense on the trails. So again, thanks for watching. See you next time.